Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Doing What Matters podcast. I'm your host, Teresa McCloy.
And I'm your co-host, Erica Vinson, and we are thrilled that you're listening today as we dive into discussions about life, business, and all the things that truly matter.
Here on the Doing What Matters podcast, we embrace a holistic approach to living, a way of life that's rooted in rest, not rush. It's about connecting to our real self, our real life, and our real work, remembering who God uniquely created us to be and redefining success through a different lens.
So whether you're here to find inspiration, practical advice, or just a moment of connection, we're glad you're with us. Let's dive into today's conversation.
I am thrilled to be back from sabbatical and back into the world. Eric and I think have done one podcast since I've been back, but for our second live podcast of the year, we're welcoming a friend of mine, new acquaintance to Erica, but a friend of mine that I know through a mastermind that I had been in for several years with our mutual friend, Mike Kim. Back in October, I had the distinct pleasure of hosting Mike's group in my hometown of Effingham. And one of the guys who was brave enough to venture to Effingham, Illinois, and come was our guest today, James Harrington. James, welcome to the podcast. It is great to have you here.
Thanks, Teresa and Erica. It's so good to be with you today.
So when James and I met, it was a first time meeting for us, but we hit it off. I love the work that he does. I loved his story and just getting to know him. We have some similarities in that we both live in really small towns and really small places. He knew farm stuff and all of this, but when we really got into his story, which I'll let him share more about, it was just intriguing to me. And I said, I want to have you on the podcast because I think you're our people in that you've made some decisions about life and the work that you feel called to do. So I'll let you do a little introduction of self, and then we'll back up in the story and follow the trail.
Sure. Currently, I am the CEO and founder of a fantastic organization called the Ugandan Water Project. And the work we do is just as cool as it sounds. We serve communities all across Uganda and help overcome the water crisis there. A lot of the stuff you would picture, drilling wells and rainwater systems and things like that. I've been doing that for more than 16 years now. It's
Wow.
been amazing to be on that journey and to learn and grow. It has been quite an evolution along the way, but that's what I'm doing now. I love inviting people to be part of making that impact.
One of the things I got to see James do while we were all together is he did a presentation about the program and gave us some backstory. I want to go back in the story because 16 years is a long time to be in this work,
Yeah.
but something got you here. So
Yes.
take us back to what you've done in the past, what skills, talents, gifts, and abilities got you prepared for the work you do now, because I don't think anything we ever learn is wasted. And
No.
I'm sure you've brought a lot of things forward. So take us back a few years, however many years that is.
At the time that I started Ugandan Water Project, I was the road and tour manager for a band. We'd do events Northeast United States, East Coast. And so I was booking events and doing lighting and sound for this little band, nothing that anyone would ever have heard of. But previous to that, I had spent time I was a purchasing agent for a winery. There was a season where I helped work in college bookstores. And there was even a while where I spent 5 years running the back office for my wife's Mary Kay business. She was very successful there. So I
Oh my
worked
gosh, there's a thread we won't go down. Been
oh
there,
my
done.
goodness. So it's like all this stuff, right? But basically, as I was finding my biggest value add and fulfillment at the intersection of people and puzzles, right? I like logistics and relationships. That analytical side of me and relational side, when those things can intersect, I've always found that to be really fulfilling. You can see thread all the way through to what I'm doing now. A lot of what I'm doing now is I run a construction company and a vision casting fundraising arm here in the US. So it's all still very consistent.
And James, just hearing you talk about people and puzzles, there's two things there, very relational and then some strategic work as well. But where's the intersection there that pushed you towards this Ugandan Water Project?
Yeah. So the band I was working with was a faith-based ministry. We had just finished a conference. We were leading worship and I was running all the tech for that. That was right here in the area where I live in Rochester, New York. And that following week, I ended up at a barbecue. There was a guy that had come from Uganda to that leadership conference. I like people from different places. I love learning about people from other places in the country or in the world. I love the contrast and commonality we have in our lives. I sat down at that barbecue and started asking this guy from Uganda questions about life and his background. I was curious to know more and more. And he was, even though he was a teacher and a pastor, the biggest challenges he was facing in his life, in his work, were he would look out at the faces of congregations and classrooms of people who were hungry and thirsty and sick. And that was not what his training was about addressing. It's really crippling to know that those practical obstacles get in the way of what I can really do for these people. When he said, people are thirsty, I said, tell me more about that. He began to tell the story of the challenge in day-to-day life that thousands and thousands of people in Uganda face to have safe and sustainable water. Something hooked in my heart. I said, this is something that we know how to fix. And I would say this isn't just something that should change. This is something that must change. And that began a curiosity that led about a year later to me stepping off an airplane for the first time onto the African continent.
Eric and I both work as coaches, so we're always about, let's ask the curious question. I'm going to, a year later, take a trip there and then build from there into what you now have.
In the years growing up, coming of age, as early as high school and college, I started to realize everything that happens around us happens through people.
Mm.
I've learned that so many of us can learn so many things. And yes, I've encountered people that I go, oh, you have an uncommon ability or intelligence. So many of us can learn to do just about anything. I think I started to embrace that mentality of, what if I just assume that I'm capable?
Mm.
That's not arrogance, but just assume that if there's something that I think is important to be part of, there's no reason not to be part of it. If there's something I think needs to be done, there's not some they that do that. It's just people and I'm people. The other thing I would say is engaging in life with the assumption that why not me?
There's such a powerful mindset there. What if I assume that I'm capable? We talk a lot about the tool of the Enneagram. As you're describing your story, you hear the wisdom of going, there's something intriguing here. Feel the empathy of your heart. But then sometimes we just stop short of the action. And you
Mm.
actually embodied that action, James, and really stepped into that head, heart, body wisdom. How has that mindset guided you and actually blessed you in being able to walk into something that can seem way bigger? You're going, this is a global issue.
I was stepping into something that I certainly had confidence I could learn, but I could tell you where I stand now. I look back and go, oh, I didn't realize just how little I knew and how much I had to learn. I was aware that I would need to embrace that learning cycle. There was that belief that everything starts with a dream, intention, and a willingness to embrace some messiness at that beginning.
Mm.
I think I was stick my finger in the fan, try. I didn't necessarily think I was starting an organization that would have the impact it's having now. I wanted to help this guy that I was meeting address a need for some people he cared about that I thought I could help him with. He
Like,
does, yeah,
almost
yeah.
like God doesn't give us all of it, because if he did, we wouldn't
Right.
do things like you've done. We wouldn't start businesses. We wouldn't step out of our comfort zone. Really, for you, the first step was just, I'm going to
Yeah.
the continent of Africa and I'm going to take the next bold step. So after you get there, without going into all the details, but what happens in your heart? Like Erica was saying, there had to be something pretty transformational. As many of us that have taken that leap of faith,
Yeah.
something happens. What happened for you?
I have an audio aid. This is a key ring. When I came to that first location where we did our first rainwater system at a rural church on Walakabu Road in Jinja, I was talking to the folks there about this water system and what does this mean to their life and to the community. It was like I pulled out a key ring that I'd been carrying and I thought, I've always used this key to unlock this door, and suddenly realized this is not just the key to that door. This is a master key.
Mm.
talking to the people whose lives were going to actually be impacted by that water system, that this wasn't just about, oh, they don't have safe water. It's not just your health, it's family stability, household economics, community economics, educational opportunities for children, especially women and girls. All of these things connected to water. And I had no idea until I stepped into it. Oh, guess what? This also redeems time in unbelievable volumes. It was so many things in that moment. It just all of a sudden snapped to focus. And I realized, oh my gosh, this thing that I thought was good is great. And I could do this 1,000 times.
The energy that you speak with always just inspires me because your passion, you're just passionate about it because it is that domino effect, right? Like
Yeah.
if we do this little thing
Yeah,
today,
yeah.
I was sitting here working and my phone rings and it's a friend I haven't talked to in over a year. And he goes, "You came to mind he goes, I just wanted to share with you. My wife and I and our 2 daughters are going to go to Mexico this summer and live for 2 or 3 months." And he said the same thing you did. He said, "We build a home every week with this mission. It's a little place, but it's different than the cardboard boxes they're putting together.
Mhm.
That home allows that woman, they can go find work, that economic impact." He was sharing with the same passion you are. This one small thing that we do, water, homes, whatever, changes lives, changes generations.
Coming back, I felt a certain sense of both passion and vision, but also responsibility of, hey, I have seen this. I'm now accountable for what I know, to tell the story and to show the pictures and to invite. I realize I'm a bridge. I have an opportunity and a responsibility to be a bridge connecting people with this opportunity to have an impact. Because I think that the problem of water doesn't persist because we can't solve it. It's this really tragic alchemy of apathy and ignorance. We don't care because we don't know. But as we learn, our hearts are and minds are engaged. If I told you we cured cancer 10 years ago and we still tolerate it, you'd be furious because all of us have had someone we've grieved the loss of from cancer. This is a problem we know how to solve, but people don't know exactly what it looks like. I don't know where to start. If you hear about this and your heart is moved, I will help you quickly, efficiently, and effectively deploy a solution. People get excited. They can do something. It's solvable. I realized we have an opportunity to help people participate in transformation in a powerful way.
Once the scales fall from your eyes and you go, oh my goodness, there is this opportunity. I am accountable. I can be a bridge. You're talking about the transformation that's possible for the Ugandan people, which is where your heart is, right? It's about the people. You said that even before we hit record. This isn't about just Uganda. It's about Ugandan, the people. What had to shift in you to make it possible for you to continue to build the bridge?
Yeah, well, I am a high energy person and you're proficient in Enneagram. I'm a classic Enneagram 8 with a 7 wing. 8s have a high energy content. I really have a lot of energy. So first I was like, I'm going to put my shoulder into this and just move it, burning the candle at both ends, cutting it in half and burning it from the middle. When I first started, it was just, what can I do wherever I can do it? And very quickly I started to realize, if I'm going to last, and more importantly, if my family is going to last, what is the impact on the people around me? I realized I have to come to a place where I can do this with passion, but from peace. That is a head game because it's a huge problem. Lives are literally on the line based on the outcome of these projects. This is life and death stuff. There's always more problem than we have money for. And I had to get to a place where I realized, oh, some days the best way for me to save lives in Uganda, to help provide safe water, sometimes the best way to advance that today is to go sit on the sidelines and watch a 3-hour softball game and cheer for my kids, or to take a day off and do nothing, right?
Yes.
Because I had to care for myself, care for the people around me, and change the pace. And that was not easy for me. And I didn't always do that well. And I definitely paid the price in different ways. But you're right. It's a change. It's not enough for me to just be the Enneagram 8 bulldozer and move the whole world.
Well, and I think that's something important for our listeners to hear. If you're listening in, a lot of people that listen to the podcast have a passion, have a dream, have a desire, whether it's through an entrepreneurial type business, through a ministry type business, through a church they're growing, through whatever they're doing, they're all in. They've seen the vision. If we live from, the phrase I often use is rush. If we live from, it's got to happen now, it's got to be all the time, instead of an inner peace, an inner restful state, we become no good to anyone. Our passion can slowly become something we lose passion for, even begin to dread. I'm sure you've had those moments over 16 years where you've asked those questions. Why am I doing? So I want to get real practical for just a minute.
Yeah.
You've said some amazing things today, but I want to get real practical because you said sometimes I just need to go watch my kids' softball game. Tell me what that looks like for you as a leader of a very successful, very organized organization that's doing amazing work across continents. What does that look like for you? I don't love the word balance. We say the harmony of your life. You obviously have a family. You have a lot of responsibility, but what does that look like for you? What are some practical things that you do?
Yeah. Well, I think that, first of all, making sure that there's a holistic life. So recognizing that I'm not just the job. And so if I look at my calendar and all I see is the job, that's a problem. So making sure there is time for personal relationships. I'm very good at integrating work and life. I started to find I do a lot of travel for work and then I connect with friends along the way. Well, I started to realize with my I'm from a very big family. I'm number 2 of 10 kids. And so I realized my siblings really need to see that I'm willing to come and see them, whether or not I have an event in town or a donor to meet. And so I had to start making some clear distinctions between, I'm going to do some things that are just personal and just family. The other thing is there's been seasons where I've had to say, I'm going to only work half days on Fridays. And I just need to have more margin so I can pursue some hobbies or creativity or just do stuff at home or be available to my family. Not only was that good for me, but I also recognize I have a responsibility because I lead a team of people that are different than me. They need to see that it's okay for them to have boundaries. Not only have I nearly burned myself out, I've nearly burned out some really great folks that are on this with me. I have better boundaries and I look at my schedule and I make sure I'm holding that personal time. Also, because it matters to the people that are trying to keep pace with me and taking that example.
It's so wise because of your high energy. Many leaders, many visionaries are high energy. That doesn't mean everyone on your team works at the same pace or in the same way. And that doesn't make you right and them wrong. It's just how we're all uniquely created and designed.
I think caring about the people around me makes a big difference. Hey, the balance matters for me, but it also matters for the people around me. Reflecting on wins from the last year, one of the wins for me as the CEO of the organization is that we ended the year with the lowest number of unused vacation hours that we ever have. People took the time that they needed and deserved. And that's good because there's been other years where I could look at that and say, not only did I not rest, these other people didn't feel the freedom to rest either.
Speed of the leader, speed of the gang sometimes. I definitely want to get to the current work that you're doing now. And I know, Erica, you've been listening in and you don't know James as well as I do.
I hear as you're talking about building this bridge that there's some really important pillars that ground you, which we love and practice at the Real Life Process. We work in 90-day projects and blocks of time. What does the next 90 days look like for you? And what are some of the things that you're looking forward to with this project?
The first quarter of the year is always important for us because December is a huge and critical month for finance for nonprofits. So much of our revenue comes in even in the last 2 weeks of the year. We can't assess where we landed until December 31st. In these first 90, we're doing our assessment of what we just accomplished, and our goal setting and our strategic plan runs really February to the end of January. we're laying out those plans. In Uganda, we have some really exciting strategic initiatives happening. We're starting a maintenance service that's expanding to 3 new districts. Some of the activity is happening in these 90 days. That's exciting as an Enneagram 8. I know it's going to be messy. I know it's going to require us to shift on the fly. I love that pioneering part. This is the time of year where bring our community together and talk about why we're on this mission. And this is why everybody has a place to play. Some of the most vested folks in the Ugandan Water Project community are people that are our regular monthly partners. We call that community the river. It's not just about a fundraising effort. It's about an engagement to say, these are the people that give little bits here and there, but together we are part of everything we do. Every water project, every life touched is part of the folks that say, I'm going to make this a regular part of my life. This first 90 days of the year, that is a big focus for us, inviting people to resubscribe to that vision. I think that's really important because the work is hard, we move fast, and we need to always remember, why are we on this together?
Just reflecting and listening to you talk, if you are listening as a nonprofit leader, just listen to what he just said. December is such a hard push month.
Yeah.
And yet you go into that knowing that you really are not going to set up your year until February. I remember when Eric and I were on church staff together, I was kind of leading the team and getting them to shift from, can we stop trying to do everything in December? Can we start our year in July and go through to June? Christmas happens in December, like the biggest
Right.
church holiday there is. And we're trying to
Right.
cram in year-end reviews and all these different things. So just the wisdom to recognize as a leader how your organization flows and what are the highs and lows. I just came back from a 2-month sabbatical. And yes, you can, as a leader, take 2 months off, especially if you've built great teams. I knew strategically that I could go in November and December much easier than in March and April, for
Absolutely.
example. But I want to get to letting you tell us, if I'm intrigued and I want to know more, what is the process? What is the process for involvement? Because this is a huge project, huge thing you're doing. So how can little old me or
Yeah.
Erica or someone listening in
Right.
really dip their toe in the river, so to
Yeah.
speak, and know more? What does that look like and how does it impact?
Yeah. Well, the way that we pursue our mission for Ugandans to really have safe, sustainable water and to see their lives transformed out of poverty, set free from the bondage of waterborne disease and water-related poverty, so they can live the lives they're created for. The way we go about that is a framework we call today, tomorrow, and forever. The ways that people can get involved have to do with being part of safe water access today, water projects, the nuts and bolts, brick and mortar pipes and pumps, creating water points and water systems. Also, we have sustainability tomorrow. We're developing a business model and training technicians in this country, building a local enterprise to do maintenance and keep water flowing tomorrow. At the policy and government level, we're building up government capacity to provide water security forever. And so we always say the ways you can get involved are through cash, kung fu, and connections, right? Financial support is always a great one. It's one of the most effective ways to move your values into the things that you care about. Kung fu, I always talk about it. Those are the special skills, your secret powers. We need people that know how to develop business models or understand policy development or data systems or the practical plumbing and nuts and bolts and all that stuff. And then connections. Every one of us is a broadcast tower to somebody, and the passion and interest and excitement or the compelling message needs to go out through more than just me and more than just our staff. Sharing your perspective with the people around you is a great way to do it. So those are 3 very powerful ways to move this forward and that anybody has the ability to engage in. And I think that's awesome.
Oh, great words to remember. I want to make sure I got them. Cash,
Mhm.
kung fu, and
And
connection. Yeah.
That's right.
All of those are very actionable steps that people can take. I am a huge believer in connection. That's one of my
Yeah.
favorite things to do is to meet someone like you. And I might 6 months from now hear somebody else that I say, you need to meet, and making those connections to, you just never know who God's going to drop in front of you. I look back on my own story and think, meeting this person, meeting that person, learning something from this person, financial from this person. Don't overlook the connection. Cash is always needed. Skill
Sure.
set is great to bring. I know you
Yep.
take people in work. Friends of ours have been with you, and
Absolutely.
you'll talk anybody into going if you can get them there.
That's right. Absolutely.
But what does that look like when you
Yeah.
actually go in country?
Yeah. I lead a trip once or twice a year, and we call it the Ugandan Water Project's Leadership Advance. This is a select group of people who have accomplished things in their life, whether it's in the business world or faith world, nonprofit world, or education. But I always say we're trying to move some mountains. I like to bring people who have moved a few with immigration restrictions and things like that. I can't just bring my leadership team from Uganda. We have 45 staff in Uganda, incredible men and women, and I can't just put them on a plane and bring them for a conference somewhere in the world. But I can handpick an incredible roster of passionate doers and thinkers come partner with us, and we spend a collaborative, intense, it's a 10-day door-to-door, so you're on the ground about 7 or 8 days, and you get a crash course being right in front of the problem, our solutions, and the people behind it. We take our leadership team and this cohort that travels with us, and we go up for this incredible leadership retreat up in Murchison Falls Game Reserve, and we really try to tackle constraints or opportunities through the lens of some of the skills that this team will bring together. A great example, our friend Jason Frizzell, a fantastic coach. I call him the best can opener I've ever seen because his moderation skills are unmatched.
Yeah.
And our staff in Uganda is doing a lot of work with national government. We come into these rooms where we are not in control. We're in charge, but we are facilitating and have influence. Some of our folks are from very humble beginnings. Jason came and taught skills, techniques on how to guide and lead a room effectively. It was so practical. Some people go, what am I going to do? I can't drill a well. I can't build this.
Yeah.
But what can you do? Because that guy came and delivered thunder and lightning in a bottle. Our team really needed what he brought. It was awesome.
Shout out to Jason. Great guy, great coach. You're giving a real practical example of talents, gifts, and abilities. We often talk about you have something.
Absolutely.
You're an expert in something you can bring. Thanks for sharing how you could get boots on the ground involved in this. Erica, what else do we need to? He's got my mind racing.
Yes. Listening to you talk about that story about Jason, I'm curious, what is a need that you have? There may be someone listening that goes, oh my goodness, I could connect.
When we bring this water system, the big challenge is how do you keep it sustainable? Because the government, municipalities aren't in a place where they have the capacity to maintain town water like you and I have. And so we have to have this intermediate solution. We call it Aqua Trust. Now we're taking our staff that's very good at this nonprofit program work, and we're saying you have to learn to engage the community as a customer. People with a sales background that understand service businesses or that have worked in utilities or public-private partnerships are very helpful right now to help us understand the strategies for doing that, the different power and relationship dynamics that happen between government, community, and the private sector. So believe it or not, like some of it's very practical. And there's a lot of people that if you start really thinking about it, there's a place for so many people to be adding value into the kind of things we're doing.
And
Also billionaires. We also need billionaires. Like if there's any billionaires, then
there's the practical people, and then there's these people. Like I love your honesty in that.
Right. If they have tax offsets or things like that, we can help you with that too.
Yeah. Doesn't have to be December.
Anytime, serve that problem.
And if we would all just lead with that question that you brought earlier of what if I just assume that I'm capable?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we're seeing it. We're seeing a nation's future pivot on some of the work that we're able to be part of. Right now, our small team is helping the government of Uganda build out their digital infrastructure for data tracking for all their water assets. That is something that's going to be used to serve 47 million people. And we get to be a part of that. whoever you are and whatever the problem that lights you on fire is, you can make a measurable difference in where between you listening to this podcast and being part of that change, there is less distance between you and there than you think.
I think that's the key phrase for the day. What if I assumed I'm capable?
Why not?
Thank you so much for the inspiration. What a great way for me to end my day today on a Thursday afternoon. I may not go to sleep. You've got me inspired. Before we go too far, we need to know, where do we go? What do we do? What's the action to take if we want to be involved in the work that you're doing, James?
Yeah, absolutely. Real easy to find us online, UgandanWaterProject.com. You can find out all kinds of information about our programs there and see videos and photos. You can find us on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook by just looking for Ugandan Water Project. If you want to get in touch with us, James at UgandanWaterProject.com to my assistant, because she's far better at responding than I am. We want to build relationships. Look us up online. We'd love to hear from you. Find us on social. You can find me on social too. Just look for James Harrington, or you just search for James Uganda. You probably find me.
Very accessible. So, Erica, thanks for being with us today and capturing those phrases in those places, because sometimes we can hear things, a guest like James says, and they just go through us. This is what I'm going to listen to again. There were some things that you said in the middle of this interview that were so impactful. So, thank you for your wisdom, friend. Erica, thanks for being with us. And I just want to say this, even in light of what James had a conversation with another person at a random event. And that moment really changed the course of his life and the work that he is doing. So I always say that every ordinary day has an extraordinary moment. You just have to look for them. So, James, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.